and especially entrepreneurs. When I started Dolma Fund Management, Dolma Impact Fund, in 2011, the first thing to note is that we were a startup. It was just me and an idea to become the first international private equity and venture capital fund for Nepal. Thank you. What a welcome, what a vibe. And, you know, a lot of people thought I was crazy. Some people believed in me. I had nothing except myself and a PowerPoint deck. So I don't want you to think that I stand here as some sort of eternal institution. We were not. We started out at a small, very cold office at Birua, if anybody that knows that. It was my money that went in for 3 whole years. We had no income. And we got it done. We raised the first fund. Now, what I expected to happen was that I was giving up international finance, international global issues, to focus on a relatively small, poor country, and that the issues we were dealing with would be isolated to Nepal. But a week ago today, I was speaking at the G20. And I was invited to speak at the G20 because Nepal is at the very heart of 2 of the biggest issues facing humanity today. The first is climate change, and the second is the technology and AI revolution, and how that can help drive global equality between the poorest countries and the richest countries. And I'm going to touch on some of the debates that we had at the G20, along with finance ministers, central bank governors, the president of the World Bank, the president of ADB, and such like. And this is to give you an example of where those opportunities might lie. So the first issue is climate change. We all know that this is an existential risk for humanity. Nepal is the 4th most vulnerable country to climate change, and that is because the Himalayan glaciers are melting at an alarming rate. And there's this big debate going on. Did Nepal and similar least developed countries cause climate change? No. Who caused climate change? Britain invented the Industrial Revolution, the West, Western Europe, the United States, more recently China, India, etc. Our emissions are tiny, and yet we are suffering. And not just us. If the glaciers continue to melt at this pace, we see the flooding not just in Nepal, but if you take the bordering states of India and Bangladesh, basically downstream from Nepal's glaciers, you have 600 million people. That is 600 million people that is the densest pocket of extreme poverty on Earth. Not sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, right here. If we can't solve and stop those glaciers melting, a lot of people will suffer. The West will suffer because there'll be increasing migration, refugees coming into the West. So this touches the globe. And the debate at the G20 was, if Nepal and similar countries didn't cause climate change, how can we discourage them from having a high emission economy as they develop? And the way to do that is to develop renewable energy, to mitigate against the risk from climate change. So this isn't just building hydro plants, although that's very important. This is also mitigating, helping agriculture cope with the change of switches from drought to floods, etc. This is helping with infrastructure to prevent flooding and landslides. And the way that least developed countries are penalized is that the cost of capital to raise money for, say, let's say hydro, because we're all familiar with it, is enormous. I go out to international markets. We're trying to issue the first international green bonds for Nepal. But really, I've got to pay a very high cost of capital. Why? Because Nepal is a very risky country. It seems to have a risky currency. Okay, it's pegged to the Indian rupee, that's a risky currency. And then there's the peg risk, and then Nepal doesn't have a sovereign credit rating. And all sorts of reasons I won't go into. But it's too expensive, and so the world is getting together with various funds to bring down that cost of capital. And it's in that debate, although we are globally, we may have $100 million to invest in Nepal. That sounds big, but trust me, the other people on that stage had hundreds of billions of dollars. But because we're making the change here in Nepal, we're at the center of that global debate facing humanity. The second issue which faces humanity is technology, artificial intelligence, and the whole digital infrastructure which is sweeping through the world. A lot of that debate you'll hear is about the risks of artificial intelligence. That's a debate. I'm going to put that to one side. I would be very impressed if somebody in Nepal invented an AI technology that could actually take over the human race. I'm not sure that's going to happen. Come to me, by the way, if you've got that idea, and we might finance it. But actually what I'm talking about is the opportunity for development in the poorest countries. What I've experienced, if you look back in history, back to the Industrial Revolution, who were the beneficiaries? The beneficiaries were the countries that had the infrastructure, that had the steam engines moving forward, that had the railways, that had the telecoms infrastructure, that had the manufacturing infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure. Nepal has never had that, and many other countries have never had that. What do you need? So Nepal could never compete on a sort of global manufacturing basis with half the products breaking on the bumpy roads and no railways and etc. What do you need to be an IT company, to be a digital company? What infrastructure do you need? Broadband. That's it. Right? Nepal has broadband. Maybe not outside of the big cities, but it has good broadband. And so for the first time in human history, Nepal can compete with Silicon Valley, with some of the biggest business centers in the world on an equal footing. And that is why we're so excited working with companies like Cloud Factory, Fuse Machines. I mean, heck, I came here to think I was going to be in an isolated country. I'm on the board of Fuse Machines, which is developing AI engines for some of the biggest companies in the world. H&M Clothes, Time Magazine, some of the Coach bags. And what they're doing is not inventing new AI technologies as such. They're building AI engines based on their experience with the biggest international companies. And they're driving AI, including the new generative AI, into business use cases that drive either profitability or efficiency in supply chains and in sales. I am on the board of a company in America at the forefront. Where are all those developers who are writing that code? Right here in Kathmandu. 300 of them. Okay, Cloud Factory employs about 4,000 people. We have, you heard the list of some of the companies that are competing using digital platforms domestically. Upaya for logistics. Sastadil, what a great example. Competing against the giant of Alibaba, which owns Daraj. And what have they done? You can either give up or you can innovate. You can drive more profitable products. They recently announced their partnership with Flipkart and Myntra. It's the only place you can buy Flipkart and Myntra products, legally anyway, in Nepal. So they've taken a different path. Competition is a good thing. We welcome that. And so how amazing it is that in thinking I would be in this isolated bubble, actually I'm at the center. Dolma Impact Fund is at the center of both the climate change debate and climate finance, and the technology and the AI debate. So did you know, by the way, that Nepal is ranked 7th in Asia for AI, for data science? This is a... And so, you know, please don't think you're in a small backward country that doesn't have any opportunities and I've got to go abroad. Oh no. I've seen more opportunities here than I've seen anywhere. Now, I want to give you 4 tips, because I am an entrepreneur, and I've had other businesses as well. I've had 2 tech startups, which I've managed to sell successfully, both in the United States. And I wanted to give you 4 tips, which are not just, of course, build a good business plan, a sustainable business plan, make sure your numbers work, make sure you can retain your margins. This is stuff you can learn in the MBA course at TBC. I wanted to give it to you from experience, and my first tip is this: integrity, honesty is the most important thing in business. And that goes right down to the little white lies we sometimes tell. I'm 5 minutes, sorry I'm a bit late, I'm just 5 minutes away. I mean, you know full well you're 20 minutes away, come on. We've all done it, right? I'm talking about everything that comes out of your mouth being true to the best of your judgment. And obviously that extends to things like corruption. The temptation is here, okay? Fibbing investors. There's marketing to investors, and then there's lying to investors, and you've got to find that line, okay? This is a country where corruption is prevalent, and the temptation is there. The government is there to slow things down. But boy, if you think that paying a bribe is going to speed things up, you wait till the next time you go back to that government office. You'll find 10 times more documents you have to produce because they know you're paying, right? And there's lots of academic research to back this up. It doesn't speed you up, it slows you down. More to the point, you live life in terror. You want to become entrepreneurs to take control of your lives. You're going to do what you want, not what somebody else tells you what to do. But guess what? If you've participated in corruption, if you've lied to people, you live a terrified, sleepless life looking over your shoulder. Be free. Be free from it. And from a practical perspective, I can tell you, raising international capital, we go through something that they nicely call operational due diligence. What they actually mean is forensic investigation into your entire past. Okay? We had a talk amongst our team before going into this, you know, okay guys, have we got any criminal records? Spit it out now so that we can figure out how to deal with it. Sure, I mean, some people, nothing serious, you know, some speeding fines, and they found it. They found every little thing. One of our investment committee members couldn't even remember, but he got caught speeding in Ohio in 1993, and they found it, right? If you want to raise serious international capital, you're going to have to go through this. I'm telling you, be honest. My second tip is get used to risk, because without risk, you don't get the reward. And I think there is a misunderstanding of risk. When we're employees of a company, we're at risk. It's just that we're not at the top table to know when that risk is coming. How many times have I been in jobs, and I've worked for some of the biggest companies, banks in the world. I've been in jobs and suddenly I get fired because there's a global cut in the particular area I'm in. Or, you know, you don't see it coming. If you're the owner, the risk is the same, but you can see it coming. You can hopefully get around it. Maybe you can't get around it. But the risk is no greater just because you're an entrepreneur. Actually, you can see it more clearly. But the reward is enormous. And I'm not just talking about financial reward. I think that's obvious. But the getting used to risk, being in control, doing what you want to do, allowing your passions to channel into what you do every day. I cannot tell you how excited I am to wake up and the first thought in my mind is what's going to happen today. It's wonderful because it's mine. My third tip is think opportunity, not barriers. Okay, there's a lot of people, especially in this country. Oh, the government's terrible. Oh, the weather, whatever the barrier is. And let's talk about government, right? The government here is pretty awful, isn't it? You know, every time whether it's a driving license or a PPA, it seems to be impossible, right? What's the opportunity there? Well, Because the government, because this is one of the hardest countries in the world to do business, there's not much competition, okay? We welcome competition, but right now, you have the opportunity to look at business models across the world that provide value to society, which is the basis of any business. Does my service or product provide value to society, to people? Quantitative economic value. And there is less competition, and we find the same. What we're really happy about now is because we've pioneered the way, there's a number of other venture capital funds, domestic venture capital funds. We welcome competition. Actually, the size of the pipeline of the entrepreneurs in this country is enormous. We're not really competing, we're co-investing. So I hope you all know those CIF regulated, SEBON regulated, because they're fantastic and we're working with all of them. But there is less competition. That is your opportunity. My final piece of advice is team. Build a world-class team. Make it your mission to hire people that are better than you, that could replace you. You might start out with a skill, maybe a technology skill, maybe a finance skill, but you're not an entrepreneur to eternally deploy that skill. You're an entrepreneur to facilitate and enable something that adds value to society. Try to get yourself out of a job. That will keep you moving up. Never ever say, that person is too good and I'm scared I might lose my job as the CEO. Fantastic, lose your job as the CEO. Become the non-executive chairman. Go around the world being the ambassador for your company. Build a world-class team. And so with that, I'm going to stop and wish you all good luck and just say how much I admire what you're doing. And to recap, stay honest, get used to risk and therefore reward. Think about the opportunities and not the barriers, and build a world-class team. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Honorable Professor Tim Gocher, for